Meanwhile, federal investigators are trying to determine what caused a U.S. Army veteran to snap and bring terror to the streets of New Orleans. Teams of federal agents have been scouring every location tied to 42-year-old Shamsud-Din Jabbar for more than 24 hours now. Jabbar, a Texas native who served more than a decade in the Army, reportedly recorded a series of videos in which he said he wanted to kill his family and join ISIS in the hours before he sped into a busy Bourbon Street with a rented pickup truck and began mowing people down.
You hear the screech of tires, and when I turn my head around, there's like a Yukon or Escalade or something just barreling down the street, bro. I kid you not, like real life horror movie. Everything in the car is hitting, it's getting thrown. It's getting thrown up into the air and away and just, or under the car.
Police say Jabbar was able to get around police barricades and kill 15 people and wound dozens more. He was eventually killed in a shootout with police, who say he set out that night determined to hurt innocent people.
We had over 300 officers out here, and because of the intentional mindset of this perpetrator who went around our barricades in order to conduct this, he was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did.
We have team coverage of the tear that unfolded in New Orleans on New Year's Day with Scripps News correspondent with me in Washington, Liz Landers, and Patrick Terpstra, who is live now in New Orleans. Patrick, I want to start with you. You've been looking into the suspect and the potential motivations behind this attack. Bring us up to speed with what you found.
Well, right now, we still have a very active investigation and, in fact, a very active crime scene, Andrew. Right behind me, that is Bourbon Street, and it remains closed at this hour, closed for blocks. We've seen some street sweepers going by, some indication that perhaps that might be changing at some point here, maybe soon. But as of now, this is still just a huge crime scene. We know that the FBI has been saying that they've been carrying out search warrants, trying to get more information about this shooter. Right now, we know he is 42 years old, from Texas, a U.S. citizen, and you had mentioned an Army veteran. Another thing that the President of the United States said himself is that this is a man who had a desire to kill, and someone who was apparently inspired by ISIS. Question now is, was he simply inspired by ISIS, or was there more coordination with some sort of terror group? That is really the huge question as of right now this morning. We know that police found an ISIS flag in the back of the truck. He also had a gun. He was, of course, involved in a shootout with the police that injured 2 officers. Police also finding at least 2 improvised explosive devices. So this investigation continues to go on. At the same time, this afternoon, the Sugar Bowl that was supposed to take place yesterday, college football game, that will be taking place today at 3 o'clock with all of this heightened security concerns. Many people, of course, feeling very nervous about that, but also authorities saying that they are going to have a lot of security at this game. There are still questions about exactly how was this suspect able to get around those bollards. It has been known for quite some time that there has always been a threat, especially from lone wolves, people acting alone, trying to use vehicles as weapons. We're hearing from city officials now that those steel bollards, those barricades that are meant to prevent cars from doing exactly what happened here, those were not in place. And instead, this suspect was able to apparently go around the security bollards and to just absolutely ram down Bourbon Street. We're being told that the reason for that is because preparations have been underway for quite some time to upgrade those bollards ahead of the Super Bowl that takes place last night. So still just a lot of questions out here right now, but the death toll does remain at 15 people killed in this heinous attack, dozens of injured as this search goes on for perhaps other accomplices, people that had been working with the suspect, Andrew.
All right, so sad images to start the new year. Scripps News national correspondent Patrick Terpstra for us in New Orleans. Patrick, we're going to be checking with you throughout the morning. Thank you for that. I'm joined now here in D.C. by my colleague Liz Landers. And Liz, These attacks aren't necessarily totally new to the United States. We've seen them a couple times, but it does feel like people are using vehicles as weapons more globally. And is this kind of happening more domestically too?
Absolutely. Patrick mentioned this in terms of the security preventative measures that these cities and towns are trying to use now to stop these kinds of attacks. But these are on the rise globally in the last 6 or so years. And just to refresh our viewers' memories here, there have been a number of these attacks, and even some recently. There was an attack just a few days before Christmas in Germany. A man drove a truck and killed 5 people and injured more than 200 in an Eastern Germany Christmas market. That man was renouncing Islam and supporting a far-right party in Germany. Andrew, there have been a number of these attacks, too, here in the United States. In New York City in 2017, our viewers might remember this, that there was an Uzbekistan man who drove a truck down a popular New York City street on the West Side Highway there. There were 8 people who were killed in that incident in October in 2017. Another one that we have covered here as well, Charlottesville, Virginia, that Unite the Right rally, where that was a domestic terrorism event. A white supremacist drove a car into a street there in Charlottesville of protesters, killing 1 woman and injuring others. And really the terrifying part about these kinds of attacks happening is that they're relatively unsophisticated, they are simple, and they are pretty easy for people to carry out. And there's also a connection too between rented vehicles. 29% or so of these attacks are using rented vehicles. We know that is the case in this New Orleans incident as well. So these kinds of attacks are on the rise across the globe.
And you know, the experts you speak to, is there kind of a reason behind it? Is it just because of how simple and unsophisticated it is to get in a car and ram it through a crowded area?
Yes, that is absolutely part of it. And another aspect of this, too, is that ISIS and other jihadist extremist groups have encouraged their followers to use these kinds of methods. And there have been a number of studies that have looked into this over the last few years, and they have found that 54% of these attacks occur in developed countries like the United States and Europe. And by 2016, vehicle ramming attacks were the most lethal form of attack, compromising just over half of all terrorism-related deaths. One thing, too, that researchers, and in particular doctors who are doing the trauma sort of medical treatment in these situations that they're worried about, is that since the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been an encouragement in outdoor activities. People sitting outside, using parking lots, and using sidewalks as additional areas of gathering, dining, eating. So there has been a concern that because of the increased outdoor activity and gathering spots that people are using in their communities, that these types of attacks would be on the rise, and some of the data and evidence does point to that.
Okay, and that was so interesting. And it seems like New Orleans has a lot of work to do before the Super Bowl in February.
Absolutely,
There's probably a lot of U.S. cities that do. Liz Landers, thank you for joining us this morning.